Okay, for the next part, we're going to be doing a bit of a workshop. We talked a lot this morning about the environment and sustainability, and I think more than any year we've seen the effects of climate change this year. You know, if we look back to July and August, the temperatures, even up north, where north of England, where I live, we saw temperatures reaching nearly 40 degrees. So I think everybody's aware of what we need to do. So today, what we want to do in this session is we want to have a look at how we can understand a bit more about what we need to do and explore what we can do. I'm going to go through and show a bit what weights are currently doing. So brilliant. Yeah. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to be quite concise because I know we're conscious on time, Stuart. So I'll be quite concise. We'll give a little bit of flavour of what weights are doing. We'll go through what the scope of emissions are, and then we'll run into a workshop where we've basically got two questions for you, which we'll go through. So Weights has published their plan to net zero, and hot off the press, we've just submitted our near-term science targets. I've got Matthew Arnold with me today. He's our head of, if you want to just give us a wave, Matthew, is our head of energy and sustainability. Is that your right title? Energy and carbon. Thank you very much. So if you've got any questions about this, please do speak to Matthew as we go through. So yeah, as we can see, Weights has announced its 2025 goals and looking to be carbon neutral for Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2025 and looking to be net zero by 2045. This kind of just brings that into words. The key thing really is collaboration. I think we've talked about modern construction methods and looking at the data, making sure that we consider the capex and opex, and skilling up our supply chain, working with our supply chain for innovation, and obviously making sure we've got those targets to work from. So we talked about scope of emissions. So these are split up into three scopes: direct, indirect, and indirect value. So these are important because when we go into the workshop, I want you to annotate the ideas with where they fit. So scope 1, these are the ones that any organisation will make directly when running its vehicles, running its heating, cooling, etc. Indirect emissions could be a data centre that's holding your computers, and scope 3 is pretty much everything else. This graphic, which Matthew shared with me, really brings that to life and kind of shows the 15 categories of scope 3 and also the scope 1 and 2 there. So hopefully that kind of brings that to life a little bit. So for the workshop, we're going to be working in 4 groups, so you're all in your appropriate tables, which is great. I would like each table to nominate a scribe and a speaker, so somebody who's going to take the notes and then somebody who's going to feed back to the team, and with 2 questions to answer. The first one is, what is your organisation currently doing to meet its next net zero target? So what are the themes that you've got going on at the moment? So we're going to spend about 15 minutes on that, and then we're going to look at what else could we do. You know, what are the things that we're not doing that we think we should be doing? A lot of our organisations perhaps aren't doing the things that we think that they should be doing, and once we've got that, we're going to kind of feed them back. So as I mentioned, I want you to annotate on each of the ideas that we come up with. Firstly, can we, if it's a construction company idea, please can we put a C on there? If it's technology, a T, or if it's another, if we've got anybody from none of those industries, then use O for other. And also, can we annotate it with a 1, 2, or 3 based on what scope of emission it is, please? If you could do that, that'd be really helpful when we disseminate this, because we can see how it would be classified. So I've put an example up there. So construction company moving to using electric vehicles will be EVs C1. Okay, straightforward, super stuff. So if you can nominate your note takers and your speakers, that will be much appreciated. And I'll give you 15 minutes to start with question 1.
Okay. A bit of an interesting table over here because we're actually none of us are pure construction companies. We're all tech, so we're all part of the supply chain. So I'm from BT, Mark Frost from BT. So we're going to start talking about what we do as BT and what the other guys do at the table. So from a BT perspective, so we're talking about stuff that we're already doing. Luckily, as we've discussed at great length on the table, BT are a thought leader and recognised globally as a leader in the sustainability space. So we are doing things like, so from November 2020, all energy that BT uses globally, not just in the UK, is from renewable sources. We have a fleet of 33,000 plus vehicles via Openreach. We have a target by 2030 that all of those vehicles are going to be zero carbon or low carbon vehicles. We're already well into actually that migration. We have a massive property rationalisation programme. As part of that, we're reducing the number of buildings out there and moving everyone to new builds that are much more energy efficient and low carbon buildings. Let's have a look. This just talks about the fact we're recognised, BT as a company is recognised in the top 3 in the UK and in the top 10 globally as companies of our size, as thought leaders and I guess action leaders of actually reaching and achieving low carbon, low efficiency, energy efficiency and sustainability. We're also doing a massive push again because we are such a massive user of IT and technical assets, etc. Of course, being a telco, a global telco at that, we are very much into the circular economy. There was an announcement a couple of days ago where we have just kicked off a brand new global program with Cisco. So we are driving Cisco also to work with us on the whole circular reusage of technology components, etc. Within our operations. What else is there? Of course, we're pushing all of this through our supply chain. So we have a target of net zero by 2030, and we have a supply chain target of net zero by 2040. BT are actually 4 years ahead of our target. So our 2030 target is now probably our 2025 target, and we'll be pushing the same pressure on our supply chain to move expedite their net zero targets as well. And of course, we're seeing a lot of pressure from companies we're working with, of course, to meet ESG targets. And I think we're all experiencing that. You know, the whole ESG targets are now becoming a very core part of our contracts and any procurement conversation. I'm starting to lose where... Sorry. What's the next part here? Oh, so this was you, wasn't it? So, what company is yours?
Electronic media.
Electronic media. So again, we're seeing a lot of people that are using data center services, and I think this is universal everywhere, are moving to data center suppliers that are also using renewable energy and reducing or clean power. What's this one? And of course, just companies moving increasingly to hybrid vehicle usage. Again, your company?
Yeah, so I work with Cytus, so a very small organisation. So we're working towards using renewable energy and then alternative methods of travelling to work. So local clients, wheel cycle to work and things like that.
Brilliant. So
What could you do?
what could we do better? So I think from a BT perspective, we're quite lucky because I say we are very very leading edge and very much recognised for our work in that space. But I say we're putting a lot of pressure on our supply chain to step up. But I think one of the things we could do, because we are so at the forefront of a lot of this, is actually share our learnings with our supply chain. So actually help our supply chain meet their net zero and their carbon reduction ambitions through the stuff that we've done and the things that we've learned. I think a lot of companies, there's a learning curve to this. And I think because we are already quite far ahead of our own targets and are reaching our own goals, I think we could share that knowledge with our supply chain to have a net benefit all round. Let's have a look. Yeah, just basically corporate best practices, and trying to get employees also to think about kind of when they go home, their kind of carbon impact of what they do outside of the office. Because in the office, we're trying to make everything as carbon efficient as possible. So trying to get your staff to think more about their own personal impact outside of the office. And we talk about supporting government initiatives. So again, because talking from a BT perspective, because we are such a large organisation, we are critical national infrastructure in the UK. We supply massive government contracts. We have fairly significant government influence. We're on a lot of the think tanks for the government. So for us, actually sort of pushing back into the government, again, trying to promote a lot of the stuff we're doing back into the government think tanks so they try and help, I guess, perpetuate this across the industry. That's kind of it. There's a lot on here and I can't read all of it. Lovely. But that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Mark. We'll move on to group 2. There you go, Graham.
Okay, group 2. We've got a mixture on the table here of small companies, software suppliers, and construction, typical civil engineering construction. And we've come up with a number of things in terms of trying to answer question 1. As I was saying to everybody, I've spent the last sort of 4 years working on HS2 for a joint venture. So a lot of people have been closing offices. I've been opening them like mad. I've opened about 18 offices in the last 2 years. Most of those are temporary offices. I've got 3 permanent offices and the rest are temporary offices. It's typical old-fashioned construction. Yeah, so you all know the type of offices that we're talking about. They're going to be there for 5 years, I think is what we suggest, but my guess is probably 10. And some of the things that we've been able to do now that we didn't before, we've put EV charging into all the offices now. We're looking at things like solar signage for the whole roads and solar signage for the work sites, solar signage for the offices. We're moving our fleet towards electric vehicles. Again, that gives us a problem. The more electric vehicles, the more EV charging. One of the issues we have on greenfield sites is that we actually use generators and diesel to produce the electricity for the electric vehicles, which isn't the best way of doing things. But what other options have we got? We're changing to renewable energy suppliers where we can. And you talked before about I think you just said about supply chain partners, you sort of encourage them. I think we're certainly the other way around to a certain extent. We're encouraging the supply chain partners to tell us what we're not doing, and helping us to sort of manage our deliveries of things in terms of things, simple things like stationery deliveries, making sure that we utilise the vehicles correctly, and we invite all the supply chain in to come and tell us how we're doing, so that we can make decisions that help them and help us. We've got down here locally sourced food. I think one of our suppliers is sort of changed to locally sourced food. And travel policies. HS2 have a car sharing scheme. Again, it's very, very new as far as that's concerned. I have my doubts as to whether it will work in the long run. We're not a factory. We don't have factories. We don't have set start and finish times. So I think car sharing is not easy to introduce, but we're going to try. And again, local recruitment, as a sort of trying to build a motorway or a railway. Effectively, it's a motorway with some tracks on it. Is HS2? Trying to build that with local recruitment is very difficult, but that's what we're trying to do. So that's question one.
Do you want to go to question two, please?
Question two, yeah. What do we think we can do? So low wattage IT equipment. A lot of the IT equipment that we're looking at again, and also tailoring the office equipment. Where's Max gone? I think it was tailoring the office equipment to the users more, and again a needs-based analysis of IT equipment. So making people use the IT equipment that is necessary for the job that they're doing. So not over-engineering what we're giving them, making sure its use is relevant for what they do, but not only that, giving them the option to keep equipment at the end of the period as long as they look after it. Remote building, that was one that you were talking about in terms of recruiting locally in different areas across the UK rather than having teams that are travelling around, and allowing freedom of innovation so that we can actually work and innovate and understand what the innovation is actually telling us at the end of the day. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham. Some really good points there. Thank you. In the interest of time, if there's anything duplicate that are on your sheets, can you just kind of skip through those? Who's Group 3's speaker?
We're done then. No, I'm kidding.
Nice try.
I'll just move here so I don't have my back to the room. We're quite lucky actually. Table 3 or Group 3. We've got quite an eclectic mix from high-end blue chip organisations like Siemens and Shell down to smaller organisations like myself and Tommy from Plinks, Seamfix and Revisto. So we took the view that we'd assess what each company is doing individually. Siemens, great example, their plant in Congleton actually has a hydroelectric facility on the local river without interrupting the local ecology too much, but it actually powers the plant and delivers back into the grid in its entirety. Revisto has very much a home office based workforce. Their headquarters, albeit in Switzerland, is completely solar powered. Any international travel or long journeys that any employee does, they look at carbon offsetting for that. From the Plink standpoint, as we've said many times, we're quite a small organisation, but we focus a lot on the recycling on our end-of-life products. The networks we provide are all solar powered. We don't provide any mains power. We also look at carbon offsetting and a work-from-home split 40-60. Seamfix, they're looking a lot of the G-duplication of worker credentials, so a lot of worker data that's paper-based, they're doing digitally, and leveraging blockchain technology to do that. They're automating all of the manual occupational health processes that were traditionally reliant on paper. And then we come to Shell, the big player. Huge emphasis on now being an energy company, emphasis on energy efficiency, so asset monitoring and improving those assets by buying new or upgrading equipment to make them more efficient. The CCUS carbon capture utilization storage program, creating new lower carbon products, and of course their energy program of offshore wind, biofuels and solar solutions. So what could we do better? Lots. We suggested that initially for everybody it's a massive focus on scope 3 that's described in the original slide there. We could utilise digital workflows more effectively. We can design everything with end of life in mind, thinking about demolition, reuse and recycle. Construction and life cycle emissions, estimation and monitoring. So think about what everything is doing along its life cycle and come up with ways to monitor that and all of those emissions very accurately. Increase the use of sustainable materials and reduce the waste in materials wherever possible, but whatever waste there is, manage that effectively, so really positive waste management. construction site electrification. Ash, just remind me what you meant by that. Or was that you, David?
Yeah, so setting up our construction sites to run on the electric vehicles that we see here. So
Right.
that's
Eliminate.
itself.
Yeah, got you. Okay, understood. Managing expectations on the supply chain in the planning stage. So I think we talked about it earlier in terms of specifying within the supply chain process and getting out of that supply chain the things that we want. And believe it or not, modularization. What a great topic. Continually challenging today's benchmark. So looking at not just a program of continuous improvement, trying to avoid that point where we plateau and think we've done all we can. Keep challenging, keep questioning. And again, from a supply chain perspective, promote and ask for the lowest embodied carbon in all of those materials and the raw materials that you're using. And I think a really valuable one, actually, learn from other industries. So don't just keep our blinkers on and focus on construction. Look at what's happening in the wider scope.
Thank you very much. No, that's really good. I'll just take a picture of that if I can. I will do, but just in case they don't make it. And take group 4. If we can be as brief as we can, because obviously we've got lunch looming.
So we had a mixture on our table of contractor, technology company, and Sunbelt Rentals. That sort of looking through where we've allocated, you can see that scope 3 is a really big area. So sort of going through, starting with Sunbelt, I was being told about their massive move towards electrifying their fleet. They've just bought 50 vans recently in the London area. Also looking at their heavier vehicles that can't be electrified, doing a lot of work into hydrogen for their delivery fleet and HGVs. Sunbelt's recently bought a battery storage company, so that would sort of supplement what they can offer to sites, sort of moving away from on-site diesel generators to batteries, and apparently that sort of immediately brought 750 site battery units into the business, which can go straight to client sites. They've also done a lot of work on energy management systems, particularly demand-side management on sites, so that they can actively reduce the fuel use on site or increase the longevity of those batteries that are now being used through more intelligent management of energy on site, and just more sensors being used more intelligently. And finally, Sunbelt were telling us about their Uptime Centre, which is their sort of educational outreach wing, where they're looking to educate their clients with regards to what technology they've got available and how best to use it. So focusing on things like reducing idling, underutilization, which we talked about earlier today, and also proactive problem solving and addressing issues before they become issues in terms of program and delivery and cost. So things like if there's not quite enough energy available or something's not performing quite as it should be, getting on top of that before it causes a problem. Seamfix were talking about how they're moving towards digitalising lots of information to massively reduce paper use, and particularly that paper use that would otherwise have to be destroyed between projects, which is just enormously wasteful. I won't cover that's already been quite well covered by the last group, so I'll move on in the interest of lunch. Finally, weights. So that's this is the weights table, I suppose. There's been quite a weights presence here. We talked about SBTI, which has been mentioned, and we're really keen to engage our supply chain and encourage uptake of the SBTI, not just because we feel that it's the right thing to do in terms of making sure that the targets are set correctly, but also it helps make the data more universal and universally accessible, and making sure that we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, working together towards a collective goal, which sort of does lean into that supply chain and scope 3 theme. It's enormously important. Just for weights, we've established that 98% of our carbon impact is scope 3. We talked about Waits' own journey, electrifying its fleet with regards to staff commuting. We're looking at introducing a salary sacrifice scheme to really encourage electric vehicles, which are very expensive, almost prohibitively so at the moment, and also mandating electric vehicles for company cars for management. This is all in the pipe chain. I'm afraid not quite yet there. With regards to company vehicles, we talked about the fact that we have 250 vehicles on order, but there are supply chain issues. We're very keen to get them in operation as soon as possible. We do already have electric vehicles in use, but we can't claim it's universal at the moment. We have approximately 60 across our various business units. In recent years, Waits has bought into modern methods of construction in a big way. We have a facility in Coventry, a factory called Prism. At the moment, it only serves Waits internally, but there we're building things like prefabricated risers, utility units, high-level services. It's all put together off-site, so we can install it quickly and efficiently on-site. Apparently, we've recently started providing services to external partners. I myself have a practitioner doctorate student starting next month in November. He'll be with us for 4 years, really delving into MMC and producing research that will be accessible for the whole sector and useful for the whole sector. Massive increase of use of BIM. Building information modelling. We're also looking at baselining of our equipment, so we're not relying on just crude metrics using spend. We actually want to know exactly what various bits of equipment and what processes are, what carbon that's generating, and that will give us more information for making improvements. Lots on IT. And construction materials reuse and minimising wastage using schemes like Globe Chain and working with our suppliers, and that's what we're doing. I should move on to some blue sky thinking. Again, there's a real obvious focus on the scope 3 piece, with I'd say 70% of what was thought of all has the biggest impact on the scope 3. So obviously the first thing that came up with the strong Sunbelt presence on the table was alternative fuels, and really innovating in terms of the products that are being offered, rethinking the transportation of those vehicles, and looking at MMC. We're going to need more specialist vehicles to move the more unusual components and the bigger components, things like side-mounted cabins to allow for longer loads. Improving interoperability, so the sharing of data and the facilitation of data transfer. I've got experience on remote sites where that's been a real issue, communicating data. And looking at the standardization of data, I've learnt about the herd cycles, which is something I wasn't familiar with, which is an interesting set of metrics that I'll definitely be reading into. It talks about the efficiency of use of plant on site, particularly plants such as the vertical access stuff that's just behind me. recycling and reuse, particularly on site, and seeing whether materials and waste materials actually have to be removed from site, or whether they can be used on site, either for energy recovery or potentially even materials recovery. These things like cardboard waste and packaging waste, whether there are any opportunities for pyrolysis or gasification. Innovation, investment, making sure that the good work that we're all doing and the profits sort of are fed back into the supply chain and innovation. We've got to make big strides very quickly, and doing that can encourage disruption and disruptors in the market to sort of further increase the pace of change. And that touched into an international interest, making sure that we're not just sort of keeping this innovation and these advances in the local area, but we're exporting them internationally. And that's particularly important on the Scope 3 piece, because a lot of the materials and fuels we're using are obviously imported internationally, and a lot of end-of-use plant and equipment is exported to those countries, a lot of IT equipment and plant. And then finally, I'm very aware of time, looking at the use of smart buildings and digital twins and AI to really make best use of the data collected from sensors to help inform decision making. It's just data. And that's something that at Waits we're definitely looking for from our supply chain. More and more information, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and thank you very much, everybody, for contributing. Some really good points that came out there, and I'll hand over to you, Stuart, now. Sorry about the late lunch.
That's all right. We have lunch now, but what everything translates to, or will do, is we'll collate it all up. We had plans a few months ago to put together a net zero project, and that's what we're going to do. So for those that have already expressed an interest, I'll be in touch. For those that want to be involved, reach out to me or Steve, and we can take it forwards. Incidentally, I listened to all those contributions, and great to hear what BT are doing. Thank you. I went along the road yesterday, and just out of the side window, I noticed the railway track running through Milton Keynes, and anybody can see that. That's Tesco delivering to major distribution centres. I didn't know they did this, but those are containers. Can you see those on the railways? Awesome. And on the bottom of each container, I didn't get the next picture because I did it from the dash cam. They've got all their targets written across the bottom of the container. So net zero by, I don't know, 2030, I think it said. But yeah, fantastic. So we're all doing it, or we're all aspiring to do it. What do we need? A bit more encouragement? No, we've got the encouragement. So yeah, we've got the project. Reach out to me. Those that haven't, want to know more about it. It's about what we can make it.